Nathan Koen, step away from the case board. I'm a DA supervisor. This is my office. You were paid to protect a trafficker from detection.
To his colleagues, Nathan Koen was a dedicated DEA Group Supervisor, hunting the worst drug traffickers in the country. To investigators, he was something else entirely, a federal agent on a Kingpin's payroll.
He says the information came from you. He is a trafficker trying to save himself, and you are letting him rewrite my work into a payoff.
He would exercise that right, but by then the government already had $31,500 in documented payments, sworn testimony from the exact trafficker he was supposed to be hunting, and a paper trail stretching back to a jailhouse conversation in 2013. Nathan Koen was a Drug Enforcement Administration Group Supervisor with 19 years on the job. He had been paid to protect the very kind of man he was sworn to catch. And in less than 2 years, the Kingpin who bought his loyalty would take the witness stand and describe exactly what he got for his money. Real talk. Have you ever wondered how much a federal badge is actually worth to the person wearing it? Drop your number in the comments before this video is over, and subscribe if you are new here. This channel covers cases the mainstream never touches, and this one gets darker with every layer. Nathan Koen was born in Auburn, Illinois in 1976. Auburn is a small town of roughly 4,600 people, about 15 miles south of Springfield, the kind of place where the water tower carries the name of the high school football team, and everyone knows everyone by the second grade. His father was a mechanic at a farmer's co-op garage on Route 4. His mother worked the front desk at a family dental practice in Chatham. There was one older sister, Catherine, who would later become a school teacher in Bloomington. The Coens went to the same Methodist church every Sunday, ate dinner at the same table at 6 o'clock every night, and by every account, Nathan was the son every parent in Auburn hoped their own boy would grow up to be. He was a good student without being a great one. Teachers at Auburn Elementary described him in report card notes as conscientious, polite, and quick to volunteer. He played third base for the Little League team his father coached. He earned a merit badge as a Cub Scout for community service after spending a summer weekend picking up litter along Route 104. At Auburn High School, he made the varsity football team as a defensive back and lettered 3 years. His yearbook photo from 1994 shows a lean, serious kid with a buzz cut and a jaw already set in the direction of law enforcement. He told his high school guidance counselor he wanted to be a state trooper. The counselor, a woman named Diane Patterson, wrote in his file that Nathan showed the discipline and civic-mindedness that would suit a career in public safety. That note would later be dug up by a reporter at the Illinois Times and quoted in a front-page profile after his arrest. He enrolled at the University of Illinois Springfield in the fall of 1994, majoring in criminal justice. He graduated in 1998 with a 3.2 grade point average and a letter of recommendation from a professor who described him as one of the most focused students in 15 years of teaching. For 2 years after college, he worked as a corrections officer at the Sangamon County Jail. The pay was $29,000 a year. He rented a one-bedroom apartment on South Grand Avenue in Springfield, drove a used Ford Ranger, and studied for the federal law enforcement entrance exams at his kitchen table on his days off. He applied to the Drug Enforcement Administration in the spring of 2001. He tested in the top 8% of the applicant pool. He passed the polygraph. He passed the psychological screening. He passed the physical fitness assessment on his first attempt. In January of 2002, he reported to the DEA Training Academy at the Marine Corps Base in Quantico, Virginia, one of 48 new special agents in his class. He graduated in June of 2002. His first field assignment was Chicago. His starting salary was $52,140. His mother drove down from Auburn for the graduation ceremony wearing a navy blue dress she had bought specifically for the day. His father wore the only suit he owned. In a photograph taken on the parade ground that afternoon, Nathan is holding his credentials in one hand and his mother's arm in the other, and he is smiling the smile of a man who believes he has just achieved the exact thing he was put on earth to do. For 14 years, he did that thing well. Performance evaluations from the Chicago Field Division described him as meticulous, reliable under operational tempo, and demonstrating strong instinct for the mechanics of narcotics investigation. He was promoted to senior special agent in 2008. He was awarded a commendation in 2011 for his role in dismantling a fentanyl trafficking cell operating out of a warehouse on the West Side. He married Melissa Coyle, a paralegal at a Chicago law firm, in the summer of 2009. Their daughter Hannah was born in 2011. Their son Grayson followed in 2013. In 2016, he was promoted to Group Supervisor and transferred to the Little Rock, Arkansas resident office of the New Orleans Field Division. The promotion came with a raise, a company vehicle, and supervisory responsibility for a squad of 6 special agents and 2 task force officers on loan from the Little Rock Police Department. Melissa and the kids moved with him into a 4-bedroom house in the Chenal Valley neighborhood on the west side of the city. The neighbors brought over a casserole. The Chenal Valley Homeowners Association welcome letter was still stuck to his refrigerator the day the FBI showed up at his front door. The Drug Enforcement Administration has roughly 4,600 special agents worldwide. Group supervisors like Nathan Koen sit at the exact hinge point of everything the agency does. They are not the highest-ranking officials in the room, but they are the ones who make the day-to-day decisions that determine which traffickers get investigated, which cases get prioritized, which informants get worked, and which pieces of intelligence get shared, buried, or forwarded up the chain. A supervisor sees everything. He reads every affidavit before it is submitted to a magistrate. He signs off on every controlled buy. He reviews every wiretap application. He knows the names of every confidential source, the code names of every ongoing operation, the identities of every undercover officer working the street. He knows which surveillance vehicles are burned. He knows which cell phones are being monitored. He knows which cooperating witnesses are being flipped. He knows which grand juries are in session. He knows, in short, the entire operational picture of federal narcotics enforcement in his geographic area. That kind of access is the point. A group supervisor needs it to do his job. He needs to make quick decisions about resource allocation, deconflict operations across agencies, protect the safety of his agents, and ensure the integrity of prosecutions. The Drug Enforcement Administration entrusts that level of access to men like Nathan Koen because the alternative, a bureaucracy in which no single person can see the whole picture, would grind narcotics enforcement to a halt. The trust framework is the same trust framework the American public places in every federal agent. The public accepts that a handful of individuals will hold enormous discretion over the lives and freedoms of others, because the alternative is worse. Citizens have to believe that the people making those decisions are not for sale. That belief is not decorative. It is structural. It is what allows the entire system of federal drug enforcement to function. Little Rock in 2016 was a mid-sized federal district under enormous narcotics pressure. Methamphetamine coming up from Mexican sources of supply through Dallas and El Paso. Heroin moving in from the West Coast. Cocaine trickling through from South Florida. A DEA supervisor in Little Rock had informants in every corner of the trafficking economy. He had ongoing wire intercepts. He had joint operations with the FBI, the ATF, ICE, and the Arkansas State Police. He was invited to every intelligence briefing that touched narcotics in a 5-state area. He was, in every meaningful sense, one of the most well-informed men in Arkansas about who was moving drugs, how, and where. That was the trust. That was the position. And it was for sale. The trafficker's name for the purposes of this account is Marcus Delano Reeves. Reeves was 34 years old in 2013. He had grown up in North Little Rock, dropped out of Wilbur D. Mills High School in the 11th grade, and by his mid-20s was running a multi-state distribution network that moved heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and marijuana between Florida, California, and Arkansas. He had 2 prior state convictions. He was arrogant, careful, and well-connected. When federal agents finally caught up with him in 2013, they charged him with a drug conspiracy carrying a 10-year mandatory minimum. He was housed at the Pulaski County Regional Detention Facility while his case moved through the Eastern District of Arkansas. And in that facility, In a conversation that would later be reconstructed from cooperator interviews, another inmate told him something that changed the trajectory of his life. The inmate told him about a DEA agent, not by name initially. He described a supervisor in the Chicago field office who could be reached, who could be spoken to, who might, under the right circumstances, be persuaded to look the other way. The inmate had heard about him from a cousin who had heard about him from someone else. It was the kind of jailhouse rumor that 99 out of 100 inmates dismiss out of hand. Reeves did not dismiss it. The initial contact was made in 2014 through an intermediary. What exactly was exchanged in that first meeting has never been publicly disclosed in charging documents. What is known is that when Reeves's federal case was resolved and he was released, he did not go back to trafficking blind. He went back to trafficking with a source inside the government. Koen transferred to Little Rock in 2016 as a group supervisor. The move gave him direct access to exactly the kind of intelligence Reeves needed. Which agents were assigned to narcotics cases, which informants had been developed, which vehicles were being used for surveillance, which phones were being tapped, which stash houses were on the radar, which shipments were being tracked and by whom. The payments were cash. They were made in person, in envelopes, at locations chosen by Koen. Sometimes in the parking lot of a Kroger on Cantrell Road. Sometimes at a rest area off Interstate 40 near Lenoke. Sometimes at a diner on East Broadway in North Little Rock, where the booths were far apart and the waitress did not ask questions. Reeves would drive up in a rental car. Koen would arrive in a personal vehicle, never his DEA-issued Tahoe. They would sit. They would talk. An envelope would change hands. In exchange, Reeves received warnings. He received the names of informants who had been developed against him or against his associates. He received advance notice when specific shipments were being tracked. He received the identities of undercover officers working the routes his couriers used. He received, in short, exactly the kind of information that lets a mid-level trafficker graduate to a large-scale one. And graduate he did. Between 2016 and 2018, Reeves's organization moved multi-kilogram quantities of methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, and marijuana through Florida, California, and Arkansas. The federal government would later establish that Koen's protection facilitated a conspiracy involving at least 15 to 45 kilograms of methamphetamine alone. That range comes directly from federal sentencing guidelines. It represents hundreds of thousands of individual doses. It represents overdoses that happened. It represents children who lost parents. It represents families destroyed by a supply that never should have reached the street. The total Koen received before Reeves flipped was approximately $31,500. $31,500. That is what the badge was worth. That is what 19 years of federal service, a group supervisor's clearance, and the operational intelligence of an entire field office was priced at. Not millions, not hundreds of thousands. Roughly the annual salary of the corrections officer job Nathan Koen had walked away from in 2001 to join the DEA. He deposited the money in small increments. He never spent it conspicuously. He drove the same Ford Explorer he had bought in 2014. He and Melissa did not take extravagant vacations. Their kids went to public schools. His colleagues, when later interviewed by the FBI, said they had never noticed anything off about him. He was, they said, one of the most careful supervisors they had ever worked under. The carefulness was not caution. It was the tradecraft of a man who was doing something he knew would end him if it ever came to light. And who believed, as almost every corrupt agent believes right up until the morning it happens, that it never would. We are about to get into how this all fell apart. Before we do, if you have made it this far, you already know this channel does not sugarcoat cases involving federal law enforcement. Subscribe. Hit the bell. The verdict at the end of this one is worth every minute you have invested. In April of 2018, Marcus Delano Reeves was arrested again. This time, it was not a DEA case. This time, it was the FBI, working an unrelated investigation into a heroin distribution ring in Central Florida. Agents had been running a court-authorized wiretap on a mid-level distributor in Orlando. On a Tuesday afternoon in early April, that distributor called Reeves. The FBI listened. They watched. They followed the trail back to Little Rock. They took Reeves into custody at a car wash on Roosevelt Road on the morning of April 19, 2018. He was found with 752 grams of heroin, a loaded Glock 19, and $41,000 in cash in the trunk of his rented Chevy Malibu. He was facing life. Reeves is not the sort of man who accepts life without exploring his options. Within 72 hours of his arrest, he had told his court-appointed attorney that he had something significant to trade, something big, something the FBI would want more than they wanted him. The proffer session took place at the FBI's Little Rock field office on May 2, 2018. Present were 2 FBI special agents, a supervisory special agent, an assistant United States attorney from the Eastern District of Arkansas, and Reeves's attorney. The interview lasted 6 hours. Reeves gave them Koen. He gave them dates. He gave them locations. He gave them the parking lot of the Kroger on Cantrell. He gave them the rest area off Interstate 40. He gave them the diner on East Broadway. He gave them the intermediary who had made the initial connection in 2014. He gave them the names of informants Koen had burned. He gave them approximate dollar amounts for each individual payment. He gave them, most importantly, the approximate total, $31,500. The FBI supervisory special agent running the room did not react. None of them did. That is not what agents do in a proffer session. But when Reeves was returned to the holding cell and the door closed behind him, the assistant United States attorney turned to the supervisory special agent and said one sentence that has since been quoted in reporting on the case. We need to move very carefully, because the man Reeves was accusing was a federal law enforcement supervisor with 19 years of service, an unblemished record, a decorated career, and the direct trust of every agent in his squad. Moving too fast would tip him off. Moving too slowly would risk him destroying evidence. The Bureau took the middle path. They opened an investigation coded under the FBI's Public Corruption Unit at the Little Rock field office. They pulled Koen's financial records. They pulled his phone records. They pulled his DEA case files. They pulled the visitor logs from the Pulaski County Regional Detention Facility going back to 2014. They put a pen register on Reeves's cell phone and, with authorization, on Koen's. They watched. They listened. They waited. For 16 months. The financial records were where it started coming together. Between January of 2016 and April of 2018, Nathan Koen had made 23 cash deposits into a joint checking account at a Regions Bank branch on Chenal Parkway. The deposits ranged from $400 to $950. None of them individually triggered a currency transaction report. Together, they totaled just under $18,000. Another $13,000 had been deposited into a personal savings account at a Bank of America branch in Bryant. The pattern was textbook structuring. His DEA salary was documented. His wife's income was documented. Their tax returns were documented. The $18,000 in unexplained cash deposits was not. The phone records were worse. Between 2016 and 2018, there were 41 calls between a burner phone Koen kept in the glove compartment of his personal vehicle and a series of prepaid numbers the FBI was able to link to Reeves through cell site data. The calls averaged 11 minutes. They occurred, without exception, either late at night or during Koen's lunch hour. None of them appeared on any DEA case file. None of them had been logged as source contacts. None of them had been reported to his chain of command. The FBI corroborated Reeves's account of at least 4 in-person meetings using cell site location data. On each of the dates Reeves specified, Koen's personal cell phone had briefly connected to a tower near the meeting location Reeves had described. Kroger on Cantrell. Rest area off I-40 near Lenoke. Diner on East Broadway in North Little Rock. A gas station on Highway 5 near Bryant. Then came the case files. The FBI's forensic accountants pulled every narcotics investigation Koen had touched between 2016 and his eventual arrest. They cross-referenced targets, informants, and surveillance operations against Reeves's known associates and geographic footprint. The pattern was unmistakable. Cases involving Reeves's network died. Informants who had been developed against Reeves-affiliated distributors were reassigned, or their reports quietly buried in supplemental files that never made it into charging decisions. Surveillance requests that would have exposed Reeves's couriers were denied for resource reasons that never quite made sense on paper. One informant had specifically provided information in November of 2017 that Reeves was moving a large methamphetamine shipment through Memphis into Little Rock. The information reached Koen's desk. There is a memorandum in the case file dated 3 days later, initialed by Koen, indicating that the informant's information was of limited operational value at that time and that no further action would be pursued. The shipment moved as scheduled. No arrests were made. The methamphetamine hit the street. That memorandum, in Koen's own handwriting, was among the pieces of evidence the Assistant United States Attorney would later hold up in front of the sentencing judge. But the smoking gun was Reeves himself. The FBI got him on tape. In 3 separate recorded conversations conducted while Reeves was cooperating and Koen was still under active investigation, Reeves called Koen from a monitored line and had guarded, coded conversations about meeting up and the usual thing. Koen never used names on the phone. He never used dollar amounts. But he agreed to meet. He agreed to bring what he had. He confirmed times and locations. On one of those calls, Reeves asked directly whether it was still safe for a specific vehicle to be on the road. Koen said, "Yeah, that one's fine. I don't see anything on it." That single sentence, spoken by a DEA Group Supervisor to a man he knew was a heroin trafficker, was the moment the case became unwinnable at trial. The federal prosecutors had him on tape telling a Kingpin that his shipment was clear. On the morning of November 14, 2019, at approximately 6:40 a.m., FBI agents assembled outside the Koen residence in the Chenal Valley neighborhood of West Little Rock. 12 agents. 2 federal prosecutors observing from a vehicle down the street. A search warrant for the house, the 2 vehicles registered to the household, and a storage unit rented under Koen's mother-in-law's name in Bryant. Melissa Koen answered the door. She was in a bathrobe. The kids, aged 8 and 6, were still asleep upstairs. She was told to step outside with the children and wait with a female agent on the front lawn. Nathan Koen was in the kitchen making coffee. The lead FBI agent, a supervisory special agent named Robert Halverson, who had run public corruption cases in 3 field offices, walked into the kitchen with his credentials open. Koen was standing at the counter in a gray t-shirt and sweatpants, holding a mug he had just filled from the coffee maker. He looked up. He looked at Halverson. He looked at the credentials. He did not put the mug down. Halverson: "Nathan, we have a warrant for your arrest and a warrant to search this residence. I need you to place the mug on the counter and turn around." Koen: "On what charge?" Halverson: "Bribery of a public official and conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. You know why we're here." Koen: "I want a lawyer." Halverson: "That's your right. Put the mug down." Koen set the mug on the counter. His hand was steady. He turned around. Halverson walked behind him and placed the cuffs. Koen did not resist. He did not speak. He was walked through his own living room, past the family portraits on the mantel, past the school photos of his kids on the wall, past the framed DEA commendation from 2011 hanging beside a photo of his academy class, and out the front door. Melissa saw him come out. The kids saw him come out. Neighbors on the porch across the street saw him come out. He did not look at any of them. He was placed in the back of an unmarked FBI vehicle. The vehicle pulled away. The search of the house lasted 6 hours. Inside, agents recovered the burner phone from the glove compartment of his Ford Explorer. They recovered $11,200 in cash from a lockbox in the master bedroom closet. They recovered a small notebook with handwritten dates and dollar figures in a shoebox on a shelf in the garage. They did not recover a lawyer, a story, or an alibi. Nathan Koen had none of those things ready. He had never truly believed this day would come. Those were the last words he spoke to a federal agent as a free man. "I want a lawyer." He would not speak substantively again until his sentencing. Nathan Koen was indicted by a federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Arkansas on November 21, 2019, on 2 counts. Count 1 charged him with conspiracy to distribute controlled substances in violation of 21 U.S.C. Section 846. Count 2 charged him with bribery of a public official in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 201. He was represented by Terrence Kowalski, a former federal public defender who had gone into private practice 10 years earlier and had a reputation for negotiating plea agreements that spared his clients the worst outcomes. There was almost nothing to negotiate. The financial records, the phone records, the cell site data, the case files, the recorded calls, and the sworn cooperation of Marcus Delano Reeves added up to a case that no defense attorney could take to trial with a straight face. Kowalski advised his client accordingly. On August 12, 2021, Nathan Koen appeared before United States District Judge Brian S. Miller in Little Rock and pleaded guilty to Count 2, the bribery charge. Count 1, the drug conspiracy count, was dismissed as part of the plea agreement. The plea did not require his cooperation. He did not have anything left to trade. Reeves had already given the government everything it needed. Sentencing was set for the following spring. The sentencing hearing took place in 2022. Assistant United States Attorney Cameron Whitfield handled the government's presentation. She began by walking the court through the entire operational history. The 2013 approach through an intermediary while Reeves was in custody. The 2014 initial contact. The pattern of payments. The compromised informants. The killed cases. The methamphetamine that had moved through Little Rock while a DEA Group Supervisor collected envelopes in gas station parking lots. Then she called her witness. Marcus Delano Reeves entered the courtroom in a federal jumpsuit, cuffed at the wrists. He was placed in the witness box. He was sworn in, and for the next 40 minutes, in a soft and matter-of-fact voice, the drug kingpin whom Nathan Koen had been paid to protect described exactly what that protection had bought. He described the parking lot at the Kroger on Cantrell. He described the diner on East Broadway. He described the envelopes. He described the calls. He described the names of informants Koen had given him. He described the shipments Koen had let pass. He described, in the plainest possible language, the fact that he had paid a federal drug enforcement supervisor approximately $31,500 to keep him in business. Koen did not look at him. Koen looked at the table. Kowalski's argument in mitigation ran 90 minutes. He talked about Koen's 19 years of service. He talked about the commendations. He talked about the wife and the 2 children who were sitting in the second row. He talked about a man who had lost his way and who understood, now, what he had done. Judge Brian S. Miller listened. When Kowalski was finished, the judge asked Koen if he wished to address the court. Koen stood. He said 7 sentences. He said he was sorry. He said he had failed his family. He said he had failed his colleagues. He said he had failed the men and women he had supervised. He said he understood the harm he had caused. He said he was prepared to accept whatever sentence the court imposed. He sat down. Judge Miller took a breath. Then he spoke for 11 minutes. He said that public corruption inside federal law enforcement was the most corrosive form of criminal conduct that came before his court. He said that Nathan Koen had not merely broken the law, he had inverted it. He had taken the badge and the credentials and the discretion that the public had entrusted to him, and he had rented them out for cash to the exact kind of man he had spent his career pretending to hunt. The judge said that when a federal drug agent protects a kingpin, it is not just the kingpin who benefits. It is every dose of heroin that reaches an addict, every child who loses a parent to overdose, every family shattered by a supply that a federal agent, sworn to interrupt, chose instead to shield. He sentenced Nathan Koen to 135 months in federal prison, just over 11 years, to be followed by 2 years of supervised release, to be served in the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Koen was designated to serve his sentence at a low-security federal correctional institution. His projected release date puts him in his mid-50s. Melissa Koen filed for divorce in the winter following his sentencing. The house in Chenal Valley was sold. She and the children moved back to Illinois to be closer to her parents. His DEA colleagues do not visit. His name has been formally removed from the commendation plaque that used to hang in the Little Rock field office. The plaque itself was quietly replaced. Somewhere in Auburn, Illinois, a small town of 4,600 people, 15 miles south of Springfield, an elderly mechanic and a retired dental receptionist sit at the same kitchen table where they used to eat dinner at 6 o'clock every night and try to understand how the boy who used to bring home merit badges became the man on the front page of the Illinois Times. This case was disturbing, but the case on your screen right now takes federal corruption to a place I did not think was possible. Click it.